Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast. My Puck on Life, Binge, Brand, and Business with Story Shen. Before we dive in today, I want to share a few lines from a song I heard for the very first time. It's called Anthem, written by the late great Leonard Cohen. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. When I first heard these words, it stopped me. Somehow, these few lines made me reflect on creativity, storytelling, and even business. They also remind me of another song I've loved for years, Hallelujah. And only recently did I realize this song was also written by him. So, instead of binge watching a show like we often do on this podcast, today we don't binge, we listen. For years, Hallelujah has been one of those songs that seems to appear everywhere. You hear it in movies, you hear it in talent shows, you hear it in emotional moments at karaoke nights at the local dive bar. But what surprised me was learning the story behind the song that has been covered dozens of times by different artists. When Leonard Cohen first released Hallelujah in 1984, it wasn't a big hit. In fact, some record labels weren't even convinced the song would work. And yet, behind this song was an incredible creative process. Cohen reportedly wrote dozens and dozens of verses before arriving at the final version. Some people say more than 80. Imagine sitting at a table, rewriting a song over and over again, searching for the right words, trying to express something true about love, faith, doubt, and the human experience. Years later, when artists like Jeff Buckley recorded their own versions, the song slowly found its audience. Today, it's considered one of the most beautiful songs ever written. But its journey reminds us that sometimes powerful idea doesn't become visible right away. Sometimes they take time to be heard. Before we talk more about the songs, it's worth taking a moment to understand the person behind them. Leonard Cohen wasn't originally known as a musician. He actually started his career as a poet and novelist in the 1950s and 1960s. He was born in Montreal in 1934 into a Jewish family, and from a young age, he was surrounded by literature, philosophy, and religious tradition. His early work was poetry, thoughtful, spiritual, and often exploring themes of love, faith, doubt, and human struggle. But poetry alone didn't always pay the bills. So, in his early 30s, Cohen moved to New York City, hoping to explore a new path in music. At the time, the folk music scene was growing. and artists like Bob Dylan were showing that lyrics could be poetic, political, and deeply personal. Cohen began performing his poems as songs, but there was one challenge. He didn't have what people usually consider a beautiful singing voice. His voice was low, gravelly, and almost like someone speaking more than singing. Yet somehow, that voice became part of his power. Because when he sang, it sounded less like a performance and more like someone quietly sharing the truth about life. Over the years, his songs became known for exploring the big questions: love, the human spirit, sensitivity, and the search for the meaning in a perfect world. Songs like Hallelujah, Anthem, and Tower of Song all carry that same poetic spirit. And maybe that's why his music still resonates today. Because Cohen wasn't just writing songs, he was reflecting on what it means to be human. Now, let's go back to the first time I heard Anthem. The song was released in 1992 on Cohen's album, The Future. And the feeling of this song is very different from Hallelujah. It feels broader, almost like a reflection on the state of the world. The early 1990s was a time of major change. The Berlin Wall had fallen. The Soviet Union had collapsed. The global political landscape was shifting. There was hope, but there was also uncertainty. And in Anthem, Cohen captures both. He sings, "The birds they sang at the break of day. Start again, I seem to hear them say. Do not dwell on what has passed away or what is yet to be. Oh, the wars they will be fought again. The holy dove, she will be caught again. Bought and sold and bought again. The dove is never free. I can run no more with that lawless crowd, while the killer in high places say their prayers out loud. Oh, but they've summoned up a thunder cloud, and they're going to hear from me." And listening to the song, I had a strange thought. It almost felt like he was describing the world we are living in right now. The conflicts, the uncertainty, the feeling that history seems to always repeat itself. And yet, in the middle of that reality, Cohen leaves us with something beautiful. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. It's not about perfection. It's about action. Those words resonated with me in a very personal way because as a first-generation immigrant, English isn't my first language. When I first thought about starting a podcast, I actually had many doubts. Would people understand me? Would my accent be too strong? Would my ideas sound clear enough? Sometimes those thoughts make me hesitate. Sometimes they even stop me from starting. But hearing those lines reminded me of something simple. Maybe we don't have to offer something perfect. Maybe we just have to ring the bells we can ring today. For me, starting this podcast was exactly that. It wasn't perfect. My English isn't perfect, but my story is real. And sometimes authenticity matters more than perfection. While exploring more of Cohen's music, I also came across another song that stayed with me. It's called Tower of Song. In this song, Cohen imagines something he calls the Tower of Song. I like to picture it as a place where all creators live. Musicians, writers, storytellers. Everyone is trying to express something true about life. Almost like we are in this tall tower together, each person on a different floor, working on their own craft. One of the famous lines from this song goes, I was born like this. I had no choice. I was born with the gift of a golden voice. And what makes that line interesting is that Cohen himself knew his voice wasn't a traditional golden voice. It was deep, rough, and very human. But maybe that's exactly what people connected with. Because creativity doesn't have to sound perfect. And the more I thought about this idea of the Tower of Song, the more I realized something interesting. This idea doesn't just apply to music. It also applies to business and entrepreneurship. Building a business is also like climbing a tower. You start near the bottom. You don't know exactly how high you will go. And you definitely don't have everything figured out in the beginning. But step by step, you keep climbing. You learn, you improve, and you adjust. And just like in creativity, the people who move forward aren't the one who waited for perfect conditions. They are the ones who started it anyway. The ones who rang the bells they could ring. So maybe the quiet wisdom behind Cohen's songs is something very simple. Start where you are, use the voice you have, and start to share your story you have. Because sometimes we all have to start somewhere, whether it's good or bad, perfect or imperfect. The same is true in business. Maybe We are just supposed to ring the bells that we can ring today. And remember, sometimes the cracks are exactly where the light comes in. Thank you for joining me on my Popcorn Life, Binge, Brand, and Business. I hope you enjoyed this little detour from what I usually talked about. Next time, we'll get back to exploring another show, another story, and another business opportunities waiting for you to discover. Until then, keep your popcorn ready and your business radar sharper than ever. This is Story Shan with my Popcorn Life, where binge meets brain.